So one question I get a lot from folks who watch our videos is, why the heck would we ever pick to try to start a farm here in northern Vermont? Like, does farming in Vermont even make sense, and is it worth it? And as with most things, the answer is it depends, and it is wildly complicated. Good morning, my large white farm dogs. How are you doing this morning, huh, guys? Hi, Abby dog. Hi, Toby dog. All right, guys, let's get this day going. It's a chilly one. It is like 15 degrees Fahrenheit and really, really windy right now. The cold isn't that bad, but the wind makes it hard to do your chores, which as it pertains to today's video is probably the first place to start. And the first thing that most people think about when they think about farming in Vermont, where the reality is that yes, we do live in a cold climate. Probably for about 6 months a year, you can have snow within those 6 months. And our farm has two distinct modes where we'll have like basically a warm season mode and a cold season mode. And that cold season mode tends to last, I don't know, probably about 5 months out of the year. And while lately with climate change, it seems like things have been warming up a little bit, traditionally you could go weeks at a clip without the temperatures creeping up over the 0 Fahrenheit line. So the farming weather in Vermont is not necessarily everybody's cup of tea. How are my birds doing this morning, huh? Hey, are you trying to build a nest right there, lady? You have all the posture of a goose looking to start a nest. Hey, you chickens, get out of there. You're not food time yet. Release the Quacken! All right, my hungry birds, it's time for your grub. You know, when I determined that we were gonna have a farm in Vermont, pretty early on I made the decision to start raising waterfowl because they're exceptionally cold hardy. Like a duck or a goose's coat is basically made out of down, and so it's like they're wearing their own winter coat themselves. And so they do a pretty good job living in an environment like this. The hardest part with raising waterfowl in this kind of climate is dealing with the winter water. All right, hydrant, don't fail me now. It works darn nearly every time. On a cold day like this, where the temps are actually gonna only get colder today too, I'll probably have to dump the water I'm pouring right now at around like 1 or 2 o'clock, and I will re-pour it so that they have fresh water that isn't completely frozen over. But despite living in a cold climate, I don't actually have to heat my water for really any of my animals other than the dogs and cats at this point. I find that an electric-free system is just easier and more practical and more predictable in the winter months versus trying to have something that does have like heaters that can fail or create problems with the birds. Come on, Abby dog, I need your help. We gotta spread some bedding for the birds. I know, it's your favorite time. You're excited about what's to next. I know, it's your favorite. Yeah, Abby dog loves spreading the bird bedding. I use straw like this for the winter bedding because I find it insulates for the birds best, and basically I just keep piling it on top of their manure. And then by the time the spring rolls around, I'll actually have a whole bunch of this stuff composted, and I can use it in gardens or use it in the orchard or really anywhere that I need compost on the farm. So I have officially set up the nests for the geese for the 2025 breeding season. It's still a little bit early to watch them start laying, but it's getting close enough to the point where we should start getting goose eggs, I don't know, probably in the next 4 to 6 weeks if I had to guess. In previous years on the farm, I would actually set those nests up really early, and the problem would be that the chickens would actually start to roost on them and sleep on it, and then they'd poop, and then the geese didn't want to lay their nests in the poop. And so I waited a couple of months before the chickens were still 100% trained to their hoop coop, so that way they would ignore this space, and so they haven't been nesting on it, which is a good thing. So we've got some assorted kitchen scraps for the chickens. They absolutely love this stuff. Here you go, gals. Dig in. So yes, farming in Vermont is cold in the winter, but it's also beautiful in the summer and fall, maybe like late spring, mud season, which is kind of the period of time that happens after the deep winter, but before like true spring actually hits is kind of gross too. It's actually probably my least favorite season here in Vermont. But yes, the summers are absolutely glorious, and I could argue it's the best possible climate on earth here in the summer months. We have plenty of daylight for growing stuff. The weather never gets too hot. You know, most summer days you're gonna have highs in like the 70s. You know, sometimes it gets a little hotter. Sometimes it stays a little cooler, but it's actually pretty nice overall. It's not all that humid. Those summer months are just a great, great climate and atmosphere. And so yes, you do have to contend with the harshness of winter, but I feel like that's canceled out by the glory of summer. And our falls might be some of the most beautiful times on earth anywhere on the planet. Like, it's incredible when the trees just start to explode with color. And so, I don't know, when it comes to the climate and seasons, it's actually one of the reasons why I like farming here. Time to break off the water trough for the cattle this morning. I mean, I guess that is the thing about winter farming around here. If you're used to it and you prepare yourself for it, it actually isn't that big a deal. I feel like in my earliest years working out here, I'd make a much bigger deal of things than I do now because, I don't know, I've just gotten used to it and I've developed systems to manage it. So as long as you dress appropriately and have ways to help your animals deal with the climate, it's not that big a deal. What do you think, Betty Rubble? I just cleared out your trough for you. You're welcome to get a drink. But of course, I know the thing you girls really want right now is some fresh hay. So it's not quite as peaceful as watching the cattle graze in summer, but there is a certain serenity to after I drop the bales, watching the cattle just devour those things. And I don't know, it's kind of nice to see. More than climate, if I was going to talk about the challenges of farming out here, particularly in Vermont's Northeast Kingdom, is actually the economics of it all, where you know, we are in the second least populated state, in the poorest, most rural corner of that state. And so if you're thinking about trying to farm, and particularly if you're thinking about regenerative farming, where typically the business model only works if you're charging premium pricing, that actually can be a challenge for you. And you're gonna find you have to expand your marketplace, whether it be focusing on places like Burlington or Boston or New York, or like I've done with the internet. I feel like just trying to focus specifically on the market that we're in is hard. And so if I was going to talk about challenges of farming in Vermont, that would most definitely be another one on the list. That said, one part of the economics is still relative to other parts of the country, land is more affordable here. And while you have a relatively small marketplace and market opportunity, the cost of living and your expenses are relatively high, similar to other parts of the Northeast. And so that's definitely a challenge. I think the upside though is when you compare land prices to other parts of the Northeast, this is still arguably one of the most affordable parts of New England and just the Northeast in general. And so definitely worth considering if you're just looking for parcels of land and looking for space, this is a pretty good option. And this region specifically, but Vermont in general, just has such good agricultural heritage and I don't know, just kind of a vibe. I would argue that it actually makes starting a farm out here a little bit easier than if you were in a more urban or suburban type of environment. I think the other thing that's worth noting is that the soil here can make things a little challenging. You can find, like our farm actually has really good agriculturally significant soils for the state, but you can find other parts of Vermont that are exceptionally acidic or exceptionally rocky. And I mean, even our farm, even though it's really good soil, it's very rocky. And so that makes doing certain projects like burying water lines rather difficult. Hi goats, I know you're mad at me because you're getting fed last in the rotation today, but come. We'll get you some food, huh? Yes, my little goats. You're doing really good this morning, huh? Telemachus, Barnacus, Larn, You know, as I was saying that there's like more of an agricultural culture here, I think there's also a lot more community spirit here. Vermont's one of those places that just is very focused on community and connecting in with your neighbors and that sort of thing, more so than really, I think pretty much anywhere else I've ever lived. In fact, like emblazoned on the state's flag, and I think it might actually even be the motto, is the idea of freedom and unity kind of working together. You know, there's this theory out there that I've heard from a couple of different folks that the geology of Vermont is what makes it so community-minded, particularly when you compare it to the geology of New Hampshire, which in my opinion is kind of like almost the bizarro Vermont. Even if you look at it on a map, the two are flipped upside down. This theory that I have heard is that because of the mountain structure in Vermont, it made it very hard for little communities to travel from one part of the state to the other. It's very much a you can't get there from here type of state. And particularly when you have that plus the harsh winters, particularly that we had back in the day, those two things forced people to have to rely on their neighbors a lot more, versus when you compare it to a place like New Hampshire, which had much easier north-south travel and made it easier for people to remain relatively independent and not have to rely on their neighbors nearly as much. And there's actually a whole Brave Little State episode on this topic that's worth listening to. I'll leave it down in the links below if you want to hear more. And they do a much better job of explaining that one than I do. But I bring it up just because I feel like if I'm talking about the relative strengths of Vermont, the fact that this place is so community-minded is, in my opinion, very beautiful and one of the reasons I love this place so gosh darn much. Now, you guys might be noticing that our newest resident to the goat yard, that little black chicken, is missing. And that's because she decided to move on and find herself a new home. Rise and grind, weirdos. Come on out. Yes, that's right. She decided to join the weird chickens. I don't even know how she snuck in here, but she did. And so now she's living with the weird chickens, but I don't think I can actually keep her with the weird chickens just because I don't want to have too many chickens in this flock. And so, sorry girl, you're gonna need to come with me. Come on, girl, I want you to come with me. Look, you're gonna have so much more extra space. You have all your sisters here. This is where you belong. Be free. She's like, yes, but I also have to contend with the geese. To put a finer point on it all, if you're willing to deal with the cold and you're willing to find ways to adapt and you're willing to be a part of a community and you're willing to be kind of innovative in terms of how your farm makes money, then yes, I do think farming in Vermont is worth it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Feel free to check out any of our other videos and we'll be back again real soon with another one. Thanks for watching, everybody.